I never planned to lie that day, but when I stood at my son's in-law's doorway, my old coat clinging to me, my shoes worn from years of factory shifts, something inside me whispered, "Don't tell them who you are." It wasn't shame. It was survival. They looked so polished. Marble floors, gold-framed photos, that faint smell of imported perfume drifting through the hall. I could tell from the way her mother smiled, sharp and polite, that she'd already decided who I was. "A pleasure to finally meet you," she said, her tone sugar over steel. I smiled back, clutching the cheap handbag I'd bought from a street stall. "I'm sorry if I look a bit unprepared. I came straight from work." Her eyes flicked to my coat. A second too long. That's when I decided to play along. If they wanted a poor, harmless, simple woman, I'd give them exactly that. Because the truth? I wasn't poor, and I wasn't simple. Not anymore. My name is Farah. I'm 55, widowed, and for most of my life, people underestimated me. I used to let them. It was easier that way. I raised my son, Daniel, alone after his father passed away in an accident when he was 7. I worked every job that would take me. Laundries, diners, sewing shops, until I could save enough to start a small tailoring business of my own. Nothing grand, but steady. Over time, that tiny shop became 3 boutiques and an online line of custom dresses. Quietly, I built something solid. Something mine. But Daniel never saw that struggle. I made sure he didn't. He grew up believing we were just getting by. And maybe that was my mistake. He worked hard, earned a scholarship, and eventually got a job in the city. Then came her, Alina. Alina was sweet, educated, beautiful, the kind of girl who walked through life like it was designed for her. Daniel adored her. I remember the first time he showed me her picture. Her smile was perfect, maybe too perfect. The kind that didn't quite reach the eyes. Still, I said nothing. My son was happy. That was enough. Until the day he called and said, "Ami, her parents want to meet you." He sounded nervous. Almost apologetic. They're kind of traditional, he added. "Just be yourself, okay? Don't overthink it. Be myself." If only he knew how many versions of myself I'd learned to be. So I wore my old coat, tied my hair simply, and went to their house looking like the woman they expected. Modest, working class, unassuming. What I didn't expect was how quickly they'd decide I wasn't enough. From the moment I stepped into that living room, I felt it, and the quiet judgment, every smile too polished, every word too measured. Alina's father sat on a leather chair like it was a throne, crossing one leg over the other as if even gravity answered to him. Her mother, the picture of elegance, poured tea into bone china cups and asked questions that sounded harmless but weren't. "So, Mrs. Farah, what do you do?" I smiled softly. "I sew. Small jobs here and there." "Oh, how humble," she said, glancing at her husband. "So, Daniel must have worked very hard to get where he is." I nodded, pretending not to notice her tone. He did. "I'm proud of him." They exchanged a look. That silent, knowing kind of look people share when they think they've figured you out. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, while they talked about vacations in Europe and art galleries I'd never heard of. Alina barely said a word. She just smiled at Daniel and avoided my eyes. That hurt more than I'd expected. Then, her father said something that made my chest tighten. "We believe family background matters," he began carefully. "Not for status, of course not, but for stability." I understood what he meant. I'd met enough people like him to know when words were meant to wound politely. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, please." "It's all right," I interrupted, my voice calm. "I understand. You're parents. You want what's best for your daughter." The mother smiled thinly. "Exactly, and some matches work better when both families are on the same level. You understand, don't you?" I nodded again. But inside, something cold and steady began to form, because I did understand. I understood the kind of people who looked at others and saw only balance sheets and dinner invitations. I understood they thought I was beneath them, and I also understood something else. They didn't know me at all. I stayed quiet through most of that meeting. It was easier to let them talk. People reveal more when they think you're beneath them. They spoke about their business empire, their charity foundations, their daughters' standards. Every word dripped with polite superiority. And the more they talked, the clearer it became. They didn't want me to be part of their family. They wanted me to be invisible. When tea ended, Alina's mother excused herself to give me a house tour. I followed her through gleaming hallways filled with imported art and scented candles that smelled too perfect to be real. She stopped at the staircase and turned. Her smile gone. "Mrs. Farah," she said, lowering her voice, "I hope you don't take offense. We have nothing against you personally. But I do want Alina to live. Comfortably." I knew what she meant. "I understand," I said softly. "Comfort doesn't come cheap." Her gaze flicked to my shoes again. "Exactly." Then she smiled, fake again, and added, "You seem like a decent woman. Danielle is lucky you raised him well." That last part somehow was the cruelest, because it sounded like pity. When I left their house that day, I walked slowly. The evening air was cool, but my thoughts burned. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt awake. For years, I'd taught myself to stay small, quiet, grateful, unseen. But watching those people look down on me lit something in my chest that I thought had died long ago. Over the next few weeks, wedding discussions continued. Alina's parents offered to help with expenses, and Daniel, sweet boy that he was, thanked them sincerely. He didn't see the insult behind the offer, but I did, so I agreed to meet them again. This time at a restaurant they chose, the kind where even the menus wear suits. When I arrived, they were already there, looking effortlessly polished as always. I sat down, smiled politely, and ordered the cheapest tea. They started talking about wedding plans, the venue, the guest list, the budget. At one point, Alina's father said almost casually, "Don't worry, Mrs. Farah, we'll handle the main costs." "It's best that way." I stirred my tea slowly. "That's kind of you," I said. "But unnecessary," he waved a hand. No, we insist. We know how difficult these things can be for families like yours, families like mine." That phrase hung in the air like a match waiting to be struck. I smiled. "If you say so." Inside, I'd already made up my mind. They wanted to see a poor, naive mother who needed their help. So that's exactly what they'd get. Why until the wedding day. The wedding day arrived faster than I expected. Everyone said it was going to be a simple event, but from the decorations alone, I could tell Alina's parents had turned it into a showpiece. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, roses in every shade of white, and guests who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. I came dressed the way they expected. Plain lilac dress, modest jewelry, simple sandals. But that morning, I slipped one thing into my handbag, a small gold envelope. The truth, sealed and waiting. As I stood near the entrance, I overheard Alina's mother whispering to one of her friends. "She's sweet, really," she said, nodding toward me. "So humble. Poor thing barely has anything, but she raised her son well. Danielle will do fine, as long as she doesn't get too involved." Her friend nodded with a sympathetic smile. "At least your daughter married up?" I felt the words like quiet slaps. I turned away, pretending not to hear. Then came the part of the evening where families exchanged symbolic gifts, a long-standing tradition. The father of the bride would give a gift to the groom's family, and vice versa. Alina's father stood first. "We're honored to welcome Danielle into our family," he said, handing over an expensive-looking box. Everyone clapped politely. Then it was my turn. I walked up to the stage, the gold envelope in hand, and took the microphone. "I don't have much to say," I began, my voice calm, steady. "Just a small gift for my new daughter-in-law's family." I handed the envelope to Alina's mother. She smiled awkwardly, clearly expecting a handwritten note or a small token. "Please open it," I said. She hesitated, then did. Inside were the property documents, 3 boutiques and 1 commercial building, all legally registered in my name, the audience murmured. Alina's father frowned, confused. "What is this?" "Just something small," I replied, still smiling. "From my side of the family." "You said you value stability, didn't you?" Silence fell across the room. Alina's mother blinked, her confidence cracking just slightly. "These," I continued, "are the stores I built while raising Danielle alone. They kept food on our table and paid for his education. You thought I was poor. I let you think that. I wanted to see how you'd treat someone you believed had nothing." Gasps rippled through the guests. Even Danielle's face went pale. I turned toward him, my voice soft now. "Son, I didn't do this to embarrass anyone. I just wanted you to see the difference between people who have class and people who only have money. No one spoke for several seconds. The music had stopped. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Then I set down the microphone, bowed my head politely, and walked off the stage. Behind me, I heard whispers, nervous laughter, and one sharp clap from somewhere in the back, the kind of clap that breaks tension and starts a wave. But I didn't turn back, because the truth had already done what it needed to. The next morning, my phone didn't stop ringing. Friends, neighbors, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone had heard what happened. The story had spread faster than I could have imagined. The poor mother who turned out to own half the market. But I didn't care about gossip. I cared about the silence from my son. He didn't call that night or the next. I thought maybe I'd gone too far and that I'd humiliated him. So I went back to my shop, tried to lose myself in work, and waited. On the third day, he came. I was at the counter adjusting fabric when the doorbell rang. He stood there, still in his wedding ring and wrinkled shirt. For a long second, he just looked at me. "Ami," he said finally. "You should have told me," I sighed. "Would it have changed anything?" He walked closer, his voice low. "It would have changed how they treated you." I smiled sadly. "That's exactly why I didn't." He leaned against the counter, rubbing his hands over his face. "They're embarrassed. Alina's parents. They didn't know what to say after you left. I'm not surprised." He looked at me then, really looked. "I thought you were ashamed of being poor. That's why you hid it. But now I get it. You wanted to see who'd respect you without knowing what you had." I nodded. "And now you know who they are." He didn't argue. Just stood there in silence, the kind that holds both regret and understanding. A week later, Alina came to visit. She looked different, quieter, maybe humbler. She sat across from me, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "Auntie," she said softly, "I'm sorry. I didn't defend you." I should have. I looked at her for a long moment before replying. "You loved my son, that's what mattered. But love isn't enough if respect isn't there." She nodded, eyes glossy. "I know, I see it now." She visited often after that. Sometimes with Danielle, sometimes alone. Slowly, her tone changed. Softer, less polished, more real. I saw glimpses of the girl Danielle fell for. Not the one molded by her parents, but the one still learning what kindness looks like. As for her parents, they never reached out again. Not a call, not a word. And that was fine by me. Sometimes silence is the only apology people know how to give. One evening, I sat outside my shop, watching the sunset glaze the street in gold. Danielle joined me, 2 cups of tea in hand. We sat quietly, sipping, saying nothing. After a while, he asked, "Do you ever regret it? Acting poor?" I smiled faintly. "No, because if I hadn't, I'd still be wondering who they really were." He nodded slowly, understanding, and as I watched him, my son, grown and wiser, I realized something. The world will always judge you by what it can see. But sometimes the only way to reveal its true colors is to hide yours first.